Admittedly, when a star chooses to follow their own set of rules, it sometimes can lead to backstage chaos down the road. But often a talent can inspire generations by breaking the mold and refusing to be turned into a traditional sports entertainer, or dare I say it, wrestler. Gareth coming at you from What Culture Wrestling, and here are 9 wrestlers who only played by their own rules. Number 9, John Cena. Instead of giving in to the calls for him to alter his character and turn heel, John Cena defiantly doubled down on his child-friendly persona. The reason? Cena felt that he'd been given a platform to provide hope for families, and he's proud to remind people that they shouldn't be ashamed to be who they are, regardless of the backlash they receive for it. There have been countless opportunities for Cena to go full bad guy over the years, and he even came very close to turning fully heel against The Rock in 2012. Yet, peacemaker attitude or not, he's a hero to kids all around the world. And it now looks like the closest we're ever going to get to a heel Cena is his NWO turn in the Firefly Funhouse match at Mania 36, which is plenty for me. Number 8, Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels was undoubtedly talented and one of the biggest stars WWF had during his first run in the company. However, there were countless occasions when the Heartbreak Kid clearly fancied doing things his way or no way at all. Thankfully, his desire to only play by his own rules did actually lead to him breaking the mold in a positive way, as HBK was one of the first guys to fully become the face of the company who didn't look like a hulking weightlifter. This was due to the fact that the company needed to go in a different direction with their top guy after the infamous steroid trial in 1994. Michaels wasn't a saint by any means, just ask the vast majority of his 90s colleagues. But his unrivaled charm and out-of-this-world in-ring ability ensured that he was the clear man to take the then WWF forward into a bold new era. Dax Harwood's gonna hump you down, isn't he? Number 7, Daniel Bryan. From the moment Daniel Bryan first stepped foot in WWE, the odds were stacked against him. He was constantly mocked for being a vegan, and the company didn't seem interested in getting behind the average-looking independent star. Yet that didn't stop Bryan being who he was, and his natural charisma soon began to shine through, complementing his unquestionable quality in between the ropes. Bryan eventually organically became the most over star in the company, and Vince McMahon had no choice but to crown him as the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion at WrestleMania 30. Even when tragedy struck in 2016 and Bryan was forced to retire due to multiple concussions, he didn't do what was expected of him. Instead, he did everything in his power to get medically cleared, and he successfully returned to action in 2018. Bryan Danielson has gone through his entire career playing by his own damn rules, evidenced again in his decision to become All Elite last year and beat the piss out of anyone in his way. Number 6, Chris Jericho. If he wanted to, Chris Jericho could have had a secure job for life in WWE and helped nurture stars in NXT for the rest of his days in the business. But Jericho has never been fond of settling down, though I hear he is happily married. Whenever he felt like his character was growing stale though, he wasn't afraid of upping stakes and exploring other creative avenues. He'd then make a dramatic return and introduce us to a new face of Jericho. He literally just did it again with the Jericho Appreciation Society. What he hadn't done in nearly 2 decades, however, was wrestle for another company outside of Vince McMahon's empire. That all changed when Jericho decided to go and play in the New Japan Pro Wrestling Sandbox in 2018. Also, Jericho had stated that he'd never wrestle for another company on US soil out of respect for McMahon. But again, that all changed when Y2J popped up at All In and eventually signed for AEW in 2019. Sensing that he could add to his already stellar legacy by joining the New Kids on the Block, Jericho hasn't looked back since. Number 5, Ronda Rousey. Former UFC champion Ronda Rousey has made a career out of challenging the status quo. She was the UFC's first ever women's champ and changed the way the sport looked at women in the cage forever. And after she was done there, she needed a new challenge. So she quickly set her eyes on the world of pro wrestling, as you do. Causing a fuss by pointing at the WrestleMania sign on her first night at the 2018 Royal Rumble event, fans fully expected Rousey to be nothing more than a novelty act who just showed up for the odd special guest appearance. That wasn't what Rousey wanted though, and instead she fully immersed herself in the business, working a full-time schedule during her first year in the company. This all culminated in an historic first ever women's main event at WrestleMania 35, which saw Rousey taking on Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair in a winner-takes-all Raw and SmackDown women's title match. But Rousey would not have expected anything less. Finally showing some signs of returning to her previous form in between the ropes, the recently returning Rousey of 2022 now finally looks hungry to change the game again in the coming months, proving, much like Lynch, that new mums can very much still go in the squared circle too. Number 4, Hulk Hogan. In order to become the biggest star in all of wrestling, Hulk Hogan knew that he needed to break away from the pack and do whatever was necessary in order to stay on top. Yet sometimes Hogan's desire to play by his own rules would lead to him flexing his 24-inch pythons backstage. Bret Hart, Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels and Randy Orton are just a few of the names that the Hulkster refused to do the JOB for over the years. In recent times, Hogan again demonstrated his need to play by his own rules when returning to WWE in 2018, after a racist rant on his leaked sex tape 3 years earlier. Instead of just swallowing his pride and confessing that he would do everything in his power to learn from his mistakes, he warned the current crop of wrestlers to be careful what they said, as they may be recorded without their knowledge at any time. Stay classy, Terry. Number 3, Brock Lesnar. When Brock Lesnar returned to WWE in 2012, it quickly became clear he was not interested in being a full-time team player after his stint in the UFC. He wanted to earn a crap ton of money for kicking people's asses, and he wanted to be on the road as little as humanly possible. Sensing that there was dollar to be made in having Lesnar act as a special attraction of sorts, Vince McMahon happily obliged to these demands, and Lesnar has gone on to earn ridiculous paychecks for a handful of appearances per year ever since. Lesnar also knows exactly what he is worth too, and has frequently threatened to leave the company in order to force McMahon into offering him an improved deal. At this stage in his career, Lesnar does whatever he wants whenever he wants, but that doesn't mean that he's against putting people over though. If Lesnar believes it's the right thing to do, he's more than happy to let the likes of Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre have their moment in the sun. However, if he's not in the mood to play by someone else's rules, a Lesnar versus Dean Ambrose at Mania 32 scenario can very quickly find itself on WWE television. Number 2, Goldberg. When WCW was bought out by WWF back in March 2001, Goldberg was one of the many top stars in the company who opted to sit back and wait out the rest of their Time Warner contracts. Goldberg eventually made the jump over to the then WWE on his own terms in 2003, and hit the ground running by steamrolling The Rock at Backlash. After just under 12 months in the company, however, Bill decided that he wasn't very happy with the way he was being presented, and turned his back on Vince McMahon and co. after his one-year contract had expired. He would then make a dramatic return 12 years later, and managed to avenge his controversial last match in the company all those years ago by putting together a decent feud with Brock Lesnar. However, just when we thought that Goldberg had settled into his new role as a part-time legend, whose job was to put over the next generation, the man flipped the script. Goldberg decided that he wanted to win the Universal Championship from the Fiend Bray Wyatt at Super Showdown in 2020. He then justified this decision by telling the company that younger fans would want to see his superhero character conquer the monstrous Fiend. Because of course they did, Bill. Of course they did. Number 1, Jeff Hardy. From the moment Jeff Hardy struck out on his own in WWE, Vince McMahon knew that he had something special with the Daredevil. Hardy was unlike anything or anyone else the company had ever seen. Yes, he was fond of throwing himself off of large structures and risking his life without a moment's hesitation. But it was Hardy's connection with the crowd which made him a marketable future star. This connection was born out of Hardy's refusal to be anything other than what he naturally was, a charismatic enigma. For once, that wasn't just a corny moniker which made fans' eyes roll whenever a commentator was forced to remind us who we were looking at. Hardy was a vibrant, face-painted and heart-on-his-sleeve character who generated nuclear responses because we could see ourselves in him. He's got his demons, sure, but don't we all? Yet he refuses to hide from them and has openly spoke about his many mistakes inside and outside of the wrestling ring over the years, entering what could now be his last ever run as an in-ring performer with AEW. Hardy looks set to do things his way once more, and he'll no doubt elicit a few more spine-tingling responses via sickening swantons and fearless dives from up high before he's done. And that's our list of any other wrestlers who only play by their own rules. Let me know all about them in the comment section right down below, and do not forget to like, share and click on that subscribe button while you're at it. Also, if you're a fan of this kind of thing, then head on over to whatculture.com and find some more incredible articles just like the one this video you're watching right now is based on. I've been Gareth from What Culture Wrestling. Thank you as always for clicking on this video today, and I hope you have the most incredible day and that I see you very, very soon. Bye bye.